looking for healthier, fuller hair? Do you want extra money for bills, trips, extracurricular activities for your kids, or do you want to replace your entire income? Monat is the answer. Our products are Leaping Bunny certified, vegan, and Monat can be used by anyone, including your kids and pets. Message me on my Instagram to partner with me. Founder shares are available, and as a market partner, you have access to uncapped bonuses, 45% commission, 35 to 55% off discounts, on top of all-inclusive paid trips. Right now, I also have a free gift for anyone that partners with me, so don't miss out. You can message me on my Instagram at LizChilvers87.
We still do 7 NUFC Matters show a week for free. But if you want to help support NUFC Matters, then there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast and video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications bell so you don't miss a single show. If you want to help us financially, then you can join the channel using this button with the membership starting at $1.99 a month. Or you can drop us a donation in the chat using a super sticker. We're also looking for sponsors. If you'd like your brand advertised on the flyers for the show and featured during the ad break, then email John at nufcmatters.com to arrange today. Hi, welcome along to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. We've got Ward George here to do his worst ever 11. George, been looking forward to this one.
Good.
So 1 to 11, 3 subs and a manager. And over to you, George. Who's your goalkeeper in this motley crew?
Well, the Dutchman John Carls, who, I mean, he only played 3 games in 4 years, and went away with a handsome payoff. But the other thing about him is that when he did play, the attitude in the crowd was amazing. The crowd was so nervous when he was saving shots. It was incredible because he was so uncertain in the penalty area, for example. When he went up for a ball, you didn't know whether he was going to catch it, punch it, flap it. All you knew was there was going to be a mess. And it used to, every time the ball went in the air, it used to set the crowd's nerves on end. And you could feel it palpably in the ground, you know, if you were standing watching or sitting watching, that something was happening. And it was usually because he was doing it. And he had what our Neil famously calls crisp packet hands. Or my father used to say his hands were put on hot, because he couldn't stop a shot first time. You knew if it went towards his hands, it was going to end up hitting his chest or his face or over the bar or something weird like that. So he really was the mother and father of all nervous Nellies, and the nervousness transmitted to the team. and certainly the nervousness transmitted to the terraces, because I can remember a couple of times being in the crowd when, every time the ball went near him, you could feel the ooh and the ah, but not for the right reasons, for the wrong reasons. So yeah, he gets the number one spot for goalkeeper. Interestingly enough, if you follow it up, he's since he left us, he's had a good career as a manager in back in Holland. I think he's managing the third place team in the Dutch league at the moment. So he's still had a good career in football, and I've no doubt having Newcastle United on his CV didn't do him any harm. It certainly didn't do him any harm financially. That's for sure.
Okay, so that's your goalkeeper sorted out. I do actually have a pair of gloves from John Carell. So he was a nice fella. I used to get out and about in Newcastle, but yeah, needless to say, the gloves that he gave us weren't dirty, George. So I can see why why he's been picked for your goalkeeper. Okay, so I've got to get into your back four now, George. Which side are you going, left or right?
Right, Dave Crossan first. Another nice lad, but Southern lad, I think, and looked promising in a couple of games, but slowly but surely, people realised that he couldn't turn. He was like turning the Titanic on St James's Park. He was so slow on the turn, and the net result, once teams worked their out, he was always in for a roasting. Scored one goal, scored a lovely goal in a game, but they're from 72 to 75, I think, approximately, and the 9 games he played early on were the only 9 games he played, and he was transferred to lower divisions. My understanding is, when I tried to trace him a bit, so through Wikipedia, he'd had a good career in the local leagues. He wasn't cast off. But just didn't cut it for us, and always the issue was going forward not bad, defending not too bad, except when it turned them round, and once he had to turn round, he was in trouble. So that's Dave Crossan.
Okay, good stuff. Yeah. Very difficult to find a photo of him, but we got one. We got it there in the end. Okay, so who's next? Who's on the other flank?
Keith Kennedy, the older brother of the famous Alan Kennedy.
Right, I didn't realise he was his brother. Should have guessed.
Yes.
Couldn't find a photograph of him, so an artist's impression is all we could find of Keith.
Well, that's about all I could do as well. They do this Newcastle preview thing.
Yeah.
There's a drawing in there, but I think it's actually that drawing that you've got, and but I couldn't get a picture. Keith, the nervous Nelly at the end, all nervous Nellies, he just couldn't play because he was so nervous. They reckon in the dressing room he couldn't stand still. He was trembling from head to toe. He was so nervous about going on the pitch, and it's a pity because he was a good player. And one of my old coaches, Benny Craig, was still there then, and he was a class fullback. And Benny used to say they were worried to death about him going out onto the pitch, and only did it twice for Newcastle, and both times to say he got roasted was putting it mildly. I don't know what it did for the lads' confidence and so on, but he was there for just under 2 years and moved on, went to Bury. And again, when I traced him, had quite a decent career in the local leagues. Just something about going on to St James's Park and in that black and white shirt was too much for him. And he's not alone. I've seen other lads like that when I was around. But he was quite a good player if he could get it together. But the 2 games he played, he was absolutely roasted. Absolutely roasted. Never seen anybody, taken to pieces like he was. One match particularly, I think, at Nottingham Forest against the impish winger Mackenzie. Does that ring a bell, Mackenzie? Anyway, he was a flyer, and of course he just roasted poor Keith. And as I say, something like that sticks with you, and how he ever got rid of it, I don't know. But not he never got rid of it good enough to stay with Newcastle, because shortly after that season he was on his way and he went to Bury. But as I say, looking him up again, another one who seemed to have a decent career in the lower leagues, but just couldn't cut it for us, and quite sad really. But as I say, he's the elder brother of the one who was fantastic, Alan Kennedy. I mean, we all remember him with a huge amount of pleasure for us and for Liverpool and for England. But he obviously had a better sense of gravitas than his elder brother did. But yeah, the nerves just killed Keith. Just killed Keith.
Okay, so moving on in your back four, who's next?
Well, famously Henry Savet, or whatever they call him. Yeah, I mean, you know, he was only months with the club, but he had got his pay for about the next 3 years, and as he was entitled to. But clearly, who brought Henry in made a rake. There's no doubt about that, because he was just awful on the pitch. There was never any question he would ever make it in the Premiership or the First Division. You know, he was. He just was. There was just something missing, and you couldn't even see a footballer in him. At least I couldn't, anyway. And it was no surprise when they cut their losses and just got rid. But it cost them a lot of money, because I think he was nearly 3 years on his salary, and a good salary, sitting doing sweet nothing. I didn't cover much of what he did after he left us, but again, another one who seems to have made his way in football even after his disaster with Newcastle United. But yeah, apart from the short contract, the fact that when he did play, he wasn't very clever, and so he gets that vote for that side of the midfield.
Yeah. So is he a defender or is he a midfielder? I saw that.
Well,
I'm not exactly sure, but you're in your back four. So have you stuck him in your back four?
Yeah, defensive midfielder, I would say that's
Okay.
Where he is. Yeah.
Got you. Yeah. All right. Yeah, he's down as a midfielder on transfer market. But yeah, okay. Yeah. So we defensive midfielder and a defensive midfielder in there. This is your next man, is it?
Centre back.
Centre back. Yeah. Boomsong.
Sean Allen Boomsong. Yes. French international. Great reputation. But couldn't do it for us. I find it interesting. We were talking about on one of the other platforms about people's gait, that the way they run, and John Allen Boomsong is one of those that you wondered how he ran, because his legs seem to be all over the place. A mate of mine used to say he looked like a new foal. You know how a new horse wobbles on its legs when it first stands up. Well, he used to liken John Allen Boomsong to that his legs are all over, and he did fall over an awful lot. But despite his reputation, French international, all of that, he just couldn't cut it for us. In terms of centre backs, I don't think we've had one worse. So yeah, he gets that one easily, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I think he's going to be in one or two other teams as well. Okay. Next player in your team.
Albert Franks. Albert Franks, nice lad. Actually played in the A and the B team with Albert, but he was another one who just couldn't play facing his own goal as a defensive midfielder. I know him as what I would call an old-fashioned left half,
yeah,
defensive midfielder. And once you turned him, he was in trouble. He got into all sorts of bother once he was faced his own goal. And the couple of games I played with him, he was coming back from injury and heading back to the first team. But lads like me who went and watched the game after we saw they played the junior games, we used to think, well, what the hell's he doing there? But nice fella, nice lad, but just couldn't cut it at the highest level, I'm afraid. And he let's face it, he had some real competition. He was in with he saw the end of people like Charlie Crowe, and then he got Tommy Casey, and so he did well to get in the team at the time. But it wasn't long before he was found out. I think that's as straightforward as that. So that's Albert, I'm afraid.
Okay, and next up in your midfield, George.
Well, it's difficult because of the way I chose my team and so on. So the next midfielder would be Fumanka, would be my next midfielder.
Okay, there we go, Fumanka.
And yeah, everybody was buying Brazilian and all the rest of it. Well, we got one, and he was particularly good. No, short of skill. The old phrase is he couldn't trap a bag of cement. Well, that was him. Yeah, he just was short of everything, and occasionally he would show a turn of pace, but that was it. But the rest of the time he was just ordinary, and very ordinary indeed. And people were expecting a lot, I think, maybe too much because of where he was from, and his South American connections and so on. But couldn't cut it for us, I'm afraid. He just rightly didn't last long. I'm trying to look. I think I've got it down here. Yeah, he played from September in '99 till June in 2000. Well, he was on the books for then, and I think actually only finished 5 games in the time. But no surprise there, because he really was very ordinary for somebody from that part of the world, and very ordinary for somebody to play in our first team. It's as simple as that. So that's why he's there.
42 games he managed to play with 2 goals in the following 8 years after Newcastle, George.
Really? Well, that doesn't surprise me. No, that doesn't surprise me at all. But the thing is, people were shelling out good money for that. He's probably made that length of time. He's obviously made a good living on football. So yeah. Well, I didn't follow it up as close as that, but yeah, that says it all, really, Steve. He was never ever going to do it for us. Never ever.
Okay, that's Fumanka, the Brazilian who couldn't play football. Who's going to be next? We'll find out after we've had our usual ad break on NUFC Matters.
A big thanks to all our sponsors, Skips and Bins. You can find their website at skipsandbins.com. Contact us, www.skipsandbins.com/contact. Say hello to low-cost waste disposal with pay-as-you-go and contract waste management. A big thanks to Mr. Vicky's Sauces, handmade in Cumbria. Their website, mrvickies.co.uk. Email info@mrvickies.co.uk. Telephone 01768 210 102. Thanks to United Group Travel. They are the Travel and Tourism Award winners in 2024. Their website, www.unitedgrouptravel.com. Email beverly.ugtl@gmail.com or telephone 01670 632 460 or mobile 0791 666 4174. Just £30 per person deposit. There are no strangers on our tours, just friends you haven't met yet. A big thanks to Media Arts. You can find them at www.media-arts.co.uk. And don't forget, we are a podcast. You can find us on iTunes or Spotify or other podcast providers. If you want to help the channel grow, then hit the like button, the little thumb underneath the video, click share and share to your social media, or join the channel for as little as $1.99 a month. If you want to take out a one-off payment membership, go to nufcmatters.com and hit membership. And for a £25 fee, you get a scarf, a cup, a pen, and a membership card. You can also put a smartphone over the top of this QR code. It'll take you straight there. And don't forget, we also help the food bank on this channel. NUFCfansfoodbank.co.uk is a website where you can make a virtual donation today.
And don't forget, we've got some great events coming up over the course of the next couple of weeks. Rob Lee and Gibbo are hosting an event Friday, the 2nd of August. One night in Antwerp, and that's at the gatesheadleisurecentre.co.uk. Is that where you get your tickets? And next year, Evening with the Entertainers, 15 of the entertainers will be at the Tyne Theatre and Opera House. And 24th of January, box office 0844 249 1000, Tyne Theatre and Opera House.uk for tickets online. And Peter Beardsley will be at the Irish Centre, and that is the 10th of January. Tickets for that from newcastlelegends.com. Okay, we're going through George's worst 11, and he gets 3 subs and a manager as well. And I think we've got one of the Busby Babes, George, next.
Yes, on the right side. He could play either side, right or left. But I've put him down as right. Albert Scanlon, one of the Busby Babes that survived the Munich air crash, of course. And I, along with lots of others, think that had more impact on the lad than people realise, because the Busby Babe that was flying for Manchester United, when he came to Newcastle United, his wings had been clipped. He still had a bit of pace about him, but his control was gone. Shooting ability was ordinary, to put it mildly. And what disappointing is that Albert came on the field and people got genuinely excited because we had a Busby Babe, and a one that was being talked about in England's tones at Manchester before the Munich crash. And everybody thought that was what was coming at St James's, but it didn't. He was, to say he was ordinary, he's putting it mildly. Pretty standard for him to get off on one of his long runs and leave the ball behind. You know, he'd get halfway through his run and the ball was gone. His control had gone. And very soon the crowd, certainly where I was, started to get a bit fed up, and he started, pick up one or two catcalls and all sorts of things, and you could see it affected him. Albert Scanlon, but I qualified by saying that I've heard people saying that his play after the Munich aircraft air disaster was severely affected by what he'd been through, and I would subscribe to that, because he wasn't the player that Manchester United supporters saw before Munich, and who was being talked about as a possible England player, because he was in that Busby Babe squad. I mean, they were all England players, and the best of the lot, of course, being Duncan Edwards. The other interesting thing about that is that you've got that photograph, and I had it as well. And while I was doing it, there was a friend of mine in the house, and he looked at it and he said, "He's not related to you, is he?" I says, "Well, was that?" He says, "I've got a bloody dimple right in the middle of his chin, just like you have." And I didn't notice until I was pointed out to us. But nice lad, just not for us, just couldn't cut it with us. And that's why he's where he is on my team.
Yeah, fair enough. He ended up being a security guard at Colgate Palmolive near Old Trafford when he retired. Yeah, when he retired from football. Other notable stuff for Scanlon: he presented the Premier League trophy to Manchester United along with his former teammate Bill Foulkes in 2007. And obviously, as part of the surviving Munich air disasters, survivors was obviously a lot of those events where they were respected by the Manchester United faithful. And he also attended the Champions League final in 2008 before he passed away in 2009. Okay, we're into the forwards now and coming towards the back end of your team. Who else have you got?
Well, Frank Pingle goes in at centre forward. You know, be surprised. Yeah, just a disaster, a walking disaster. Another player who couldn't trap some bag of cement all over the place. Came with all sorts of reputations. Supposed to be good in the air. The only headers I ever seen were off the top of his head. They weren't even off his forehead, as far as I could see, and just sometimes hilarious in a bad way. And how people felt that were playing alongside him, because quite often quite decent moves were being put together by the team, and when it got to Frank, it just came to an end. I think I'm trying to see, he scored 9 goals, I think, in his time with us, but he wasn't here that long anyway.
I don't even think he scored that. I don't even think he scored that, George. I think the only goal he scored was against Liverpool.
Yeah,
I think
I'm sorry. 14, I'm mixing 14. That up with somebody else. Yeah.
Yeah, 14 games, 1 goal he scored for Newcastle, and most people will remember it. And it's exactly how you described it. It was on the top of his head against Liverpool in a 2-2 draw, I think.
Yeah. I mean, as I say, all sorts of things, and one of the things that people used to say as a saving grace, but he's good in the air. I never seen any good in the air. I mean, people used to say that about poor Vic Keeble. Well, compared to Frank Pingle, Vic Keeble was brilliant, was an international class. With Frank, just no. As you say, off the top of his head, more by good luck than good management, I would suspect.
I'll pick out the fact that he came in at the same time as Benny Christiansen, who actually, despite his weird running style, was actually pretty good signing back in them days.
Well, interesting. We've just been talking about Boomsong and young Willie about their gait. Well, yeah. Benny Christensen had an interesting gait, because he used to seem to glide over the turf, but very quickly. He was still quite fast and very alert. So, yeah, he was an unusual runner as well. Yeah,
he ran actually with his top part of his body forward and the bottom half of his body backwards. He was a bit like Foghorn Leghorn. Those of you who are old enough to remember that chicken.
Yes, one of my favourite cartoons, Steve. And very stiff from the waist up over.
Yeah,
you know, it almost seemed as though the bottom half was working separate from the top. But he got around the pitch very quickly, and good defender.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, George. Next in your team, I did groan when I heard this name.
Cisco, yes. I mean, wouldn't you just? I mean, part of the real demonization of poor Kevin, and you know, that people picked on video rather than actually seeing them. The story of him and his mate turning up at the training ground, you know, Kevin to be told that this is your 2 new strikers, you know. Well, he did score a couple of goals, and he played a number of games, but he wasn't with for very long. Again, somebody else that had a reasonable career after he left us, but in Spain mostly. So somebody thought a bit about him, but no, he just wasn't up to it for us. He was a yard off the pace. Sometimes, and terribly one-footed. Bit like our right winger at the moment, Miggy. Terribly one-footed. But even when he had the goal open, you could never be sure you would have a shot. You'd lay off a pass when you expected him to shoot. So very, very, very ordinary, and not somebody that carved his name with pride at St James's Park. That's for sure. And as I say, part of the issues that Kevin had to deal with.
Still playing, George. Went on to Racing Santander, Deportivo La Coruna, Cordoba, Mallorca. Had a season at Muangthong United. Then ended up at Osasuna, Penarol, Alcorcón, and now he's at Atletico Baleares, where he signed a contract in 2023. And he scored goals. Cordoba, interestingly, over 3 years, 95 games, 30 goals. And his current record at the moment, at his club that he's at the moment, 19 goals, 3 games. 19 games, 3 goals. So he's done okay at a lower level.
Well, he's another one who's made a name for himself in a lower level. Yes, you're right, and I'm not unhappy about that. But just he clearly couldn't cut it for us, and that's all that matters as far as we're concerned. But there's no doubt. I mean, I didn't pick up as much as you have, but I could see he'd made a career for himself in Spain, and fine, great, and I've got no issues with that. But couldn't cut it with us, I'm afraid.
No. Okay, last person in your 11 before we get to your subs and your manager.
Calvin Zola. Nice looking lad. but that's where it stops. He was just, I mean, it was all questions. He's another one of the African players where there were questions about his date of birth and all that sort of rubbish. But the thing that mattered to us is that he had this, what we were being told was he was a flying winger. Well, he might have been flying, but he wasn't any good as a winger. Couldn't cross the ball for toffee. Can't even remember the one time that I seen him, he actually had a shot at goal.
It would have been the reserves. He never played a first team game.
No,
he was at the club for 2 years. He was at the club for 2 years, and he never played a first team game.
That's right. From all his promise when he came, and that's all it was. It was promise, and then all the usual stuff came out about questioning whether it was his real birthday and all this sort of thing, and then gone. Promised lots, delivered absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Yeah, ended up at Stevenage and disappeared in 2015. Nobody knows where he is. No updates on the internet about Calvin Zola. But another strange one. So that's your 11, George.
Actually, not even Wikipedia could pick up Calvin Zola. That's unusual because some.
But there we go. They would normally have something on there, wouldn't it?
Yeah. I picked a defender, a goalkeeper, and an attacker as subs.
Okay.
And the defender's Laurent Charvet, the Frenchman. Really mystified this guy. Another one that comes with huge reputation. Played for France, did all sorts of things, but didn't do anything for Newcastle United. He was just basically awful when he played for us, and couldn't stand against the winger facing him who had pace. Because he didn't have it himself, he had very limited pace. But anybody with any real pace could absolutely roast him, and used to regularly at St James's Park, sadly. So he gets the defender's substitute position, and that's not unhelpful to him because he was capable of playing either fullback and centre back in his heyday, whenever that was, but he never did it for us, sadly. I'm sure he's a nice guy, but and another one who went on to make a career for himself elsewhere, but not with Newcastle United.
No, definitely not. A strange character. But again, just another player who, when he left Newcastle, didn't do a great deal either. Went to Manchester City, which is how Newcastle offloaded him. 23 games, 1 goal. And then his career just petered away. It must have been down to injury. I can only suggest it was down to injury because between 2003 and 2009, he was at Sochaux and RC Grass and just didn't play any games. And I think he retired at the age of 35. So he just must have come to the end of his career, and that was that.
Sounds awfully like it. Yes, yeah. But in that shirt. No, he didn't. They didn't go together, I'm afraid.
Now, when I saw this next name, your goalkeeper, I've got to be honest, I thought it was the guy from East 17.
Oh. Well, I tell you what, Brian Harvey looked more like somebody from a pop group than he did as a bloody footballer, believe you me. If the lads went out and Brian Harvey was with them, they were quite happy because look at him. I mean, that's only a mock-up picture, but in real life, that hair was much blonder and much curlier. And him down in the big market, 6'2", 3, on a Saturday night, and you had a stream of girls following you, no problem. But we're here to talk about his football. And Brian, played with Brian a few times because he's wearing the famous Charlie Mitten strip with the black and white striped tops on the socks and the white stripes round the shorts, the strip that Charlie Mitten designed himself. And he had Charlie Mitten's eye for one reason. He was big. Brian Harvey was the end of poor Ronnie Simpson, an international goalkeeper, because Mitten didn't like him because he was only 5'10". Didn't matter what sort of goalkeeper he was. Mitten liked big players. You had to be 6 foot to get in his teams. But he fell in love with Brian Harvey, and Brian got, I don't know how many games he got. It was quite a few. But again, when he moved on, I think he went to Northampton and 1 or 2 clubs like that, and had quite a decent career. But never cut it for the Magpies. Another one who had very weak hands. They talk about goalkeepers having strong hands now. Pickford has definitely, and but not Brian. Brian was just as likely to drop. He's another goalkeeper that when the ball went in the air, the crowd held their breath because when it came down, they weren't sure that Brian would catch it. He might even let the bloody thing bounce, which is a disaster for any defender. But a goalkeeper, goodness gracious. So a nice lad. I like Brian a lot. And as I say, it was always a pleasure to go out with him because you were never short of girls when you went out with Brian. He was such a good-looking lad. And as I say, I think he did have a decent career, but in the lower leagues. Northampton rings a bell.
Yeah, it was Northampton. He played at Northampton after he left Newcastle, went to Cambridge, went to Blackpool, but it was Northampton where he made his name, and he played 165 games for Northampton. And an interesting one in 64-65, he was the mainstay in the team that finished runners-up in the second division, 1 point behind the champions, who were, of course, Newcastle United.
Absolutely.
So maybe his career at Newcastle, gave him a bit of give him a bit of influence to try and he wanted to beat Newcastle.
Certainly wouldn't do no harm to on his CV, that's for sure. But for us, it just was a step below as far as I'm concerned, and weak hands was the big thing. Dropping the ball all over the place. So
your last sub is
Wayne Faraday. Another one that promised a lot but delivered very little. Wanted to do mazy dribbles but didn't have the skill to do it. Always easy to knock off the ball. Just was limited in the skill he could offer, and I was amazed he stayed as long as he was only there, I think, about a year, give or take, and I was amazed he stayed that long. To be honest, he was so weak in certain areas, so easy to push off the ball. That was the big thing for me, and he'd go on a mazy run the first time the defender put a foot in. That was the end of the mazy run. You got no more. You couldn't come back for a second time, and so that's why Wayne's there.
Yeah, Queen's Park Rangers was probably where he's had his best time. 1980 to 1989, 246 games, 21 goals there, but 33 appearances at Newcastle, no goals. And best remembered for people saying that he was the quickest person in the team to do the 100 meters in just over 10 seconds. But I think most people felt that the whole point of him being a footballer was when you do that, you should take the ball with you. So that's why
just what I was saying. It was the mazy dribbles was always what people used to talk about to expect, probably from his Queen's Park Rangers days. And he used to shoot off, but he either forgot the ball or the first time a defender put the foot in, that was him gone. He was done. He's easily pushed off.
All right, then. So we've got your team, we've got your substitutes. Who is your manager, George?
Richard Dennis. Richard Dennis. Sure, Richard Dennis is a nice guy, but his lack of real football knowledge and authority shone out like a beacon when he was the manager. In fact, there was all sorts of rumours about the finish that the players were picking a team themselves. He really didn't have any input at all. He got there because he was mates with Gordon Lee, of course. I think basically school teacher, PE teacher. I'm sure he did lots of things of fitness, but his involvement with high top class football was very limited, and it showed, sadly, and it showed for Newcastle United. I mean, there are lots of candidates for this one. You know, we could have had Joe Kinnear and others, but and Bruce, of course, not far away. I came close to doing Brucey, but the thing that saves them is that at least they went into the job with some very more than basic, absolutely high class football knowledge and experience. Richard Dennis had none of that, and sadly it showed. And Newcastle United paid the penalty for it, I'm afraid.
Yeah, he went on to manage Philadelphia Fury after Newcastle, lasted less than 12 months there. And then his next managerial job was 1992 when he took over Barrow and lasted a year there. But he went into commentary on radio and did lots of other stuff in the community, coaching jobs, etc. But the experience in football certainly wasn't for him. And no surprise to see him managing your team. So George's team, just to reflect, we had John Carrelsi in goal. Back four and midfield, we had Crossan, we had Kennedy, we had Save, Boomsong, we had Franks, we had the Brazilian, of course, Fumaca, and Albert Scanlon, one of the Busby babes. Frank Pingle, Cisco, and Zola makes up the front contingent. And on the bench, we had a defender, Laurent Charvier, a goalkeeper who couldn't catch the ball, Brian Harvey, who kept dropping it, and the fastest winger in town who wouldn't take the ball with him, Wayne Faraday. And the manager was Richard Dennis, who, of course, Malcolm MacDonald on this show has often told the story of, on his very first meeting, greeted them as Dennis Richards instead of Richard Dennis. Never really lived that down, Malcolm, I don't think. But that's great, George. Wonderful to hear your all-time worst 11, and look forward to doing another show with you very soon, mate.
Yeah, and I've got to say it is nice to be able to say that I actually played with one or two of them. You know, that's unusual, but it didn't save them, I'm afraid.
All right, George. Take care. See you soon, mate. Bye-bye.
Yeah, great. Thanks. Bye-bye.